Convention on the Prohibition of the Development, Production and Stockpiling of Bacteriological, Biological, and Toxin Weapons and on their Destruction. Done at London, Moscow, Washington on 10 April 1972, entry into force, 26 March 1975. The states parties to this convention, determined to act with a view to achieving effective progress towards general and complete disarmament, including the prohibition and elimination of all types of weapons of mass destruction, and convinced that the prohibition of the development, production and stockpiling of chemical and bacteriological, biological, weapons and their elimination, through effective measures, will facilitate the achievement of general and complete disarmament under strict and effective international control. Recognizing the important significance of the Protocol for the Prohibition of the Use in War of asphyxiating, poisonous or other gases, and of bacteriological methods of warfare, signed at Geneva on 17 June 1925, and conscious also of the contribution which the said protocol has already made and continues to make, to mitigating the horrors of war. Reaffirming their adherence to the principles and objectives of that protocol and calling upon all states to comply strictly with them. Recalling that the General Assembly of the United Nations has repeatedly condemned all actions contrary to the principles and objectives of the Geneva Protocol of 17 June 1925, desiring to contribute to the strengthening of confidence between peoples and the general improvement of the international atmosphere. Desiring also to contribute to the realization of the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations. Convinced of the importance and urgency of eliminating from the arsenals of states, through effective measures, such dangerous weapons of mass destruction as those using chemical or bacteriological, biological, agents. Recognizing that an agreement on the prohibition of bacteriological, biological, and toxin weapons represents a first possible step towards the achievement of agreement on effective measures also for the prohibition of the development, production and stockpiling of chemical weapons, and determined to continue negotiations to that end. Determined, for the sake of all mankind, to exclude completely the possibility of bacteriological, biological, agents and toxins being used as weapons. Convinced that such use would be repugnant to the conscience of mankind and that no effort should be spared to minimize this risk. Have agreed as follows. Article 1. Each state party to this convention undertakes never in any circumstances to develop, produce, stockpile or otherwise acquire or retain 1. Microbial or other biological agents, or toxins whatever their origin or method of production, of types and in quantities that have no justification for prophylactic, protective or other peaceful purposes. 2. Weapons, equipment or means of delivery designed to use such agents or toxins for hostile purposes or in armed conflict. Article 2. Each state party to this convention undertakes to destroy, or to divert to peaceful purposes, as soon as possible but not later than 9 months after the entry into force of the convention, all agents, toxins, weapons, equipment and means of delivery specified in Article I of the convention, which are in its possession or under its jurisdiction or control. In implementing the provisions of this article, all necessary safety precautions shall be observed to protect populations and the environment. Article 3. Each state party to this convention undertakes not to transfer to any recipient whatsoever, directly or indirectly, and not in any way to assist, encourage, or induce any state, group of states or international organizations to manufacture or otherwise acquire any of the agents, toxins, weapons, equipment or means of delivery specified in Article I of the Convention. Article 4. Each state party to this convention shall, in accordance with its constitutional processes, take any necessary measures to prohibit and prevent the development, production, stockpiling, acquisition or retention of the agents, toxins, weapons, equipment and means of delivery specified in Article I of the Convention, within the territory of such state, under its jurisdiction or under its control anywhere. Article 5. The states parties to this convention undertake to consult one another and to cooperate in solving any problems which may arise in relation to the objective of, or in the application of the provisions of, the convention. Consultation and cooperation pursuant to this article may also be undertaken through appropriate international procedures within the framework of the United Nations and in accordance with its Charter. Article 6. 1. Any state party to this convention which finds that any other state party is acting in breach of obligations deriving from the provisions of the convention may lodge a complaint with the Security Council of the United Nations. Such a complaint should include all possible evidence confirming its validity, as well as a request for its consideration by the Security Council. 2. Each state party to this convention undertakes to cooperate in carrying out any investigation which the Security Council may initiate, in accordance with the provisions of the Charter of the United Nations, on the basis of the complaint received by the Council. The Security Council shall inform the states parties to the convention of the results of the investigation. Article 7. Each state party to this convention undertakes to provide or support assistance, in accordance with the United Nations Charter, to any party to the convention which so requests, if the Security Council decides that such party has been exposed to danger as a result of violation of the convention. Article 8. Nothing in this convention shall be interpreted as in any way limiting or detracting from the obligations assumed by any state under the Protocol for the Prohibition of the Use in War of asphyxiating, poisonous or other gases, and of bacteriological methods of warfare, signed at Geneva on the 17th of June 1925. Article 9. Each state party to this convention affirms the recognized objective of effective prohibition of chemical weapons and, to this end, undertakes to continue negotiations in good faith with a view to reaching early agreement on effective measures for the prohibition of their development, production and stockpiling and for their destruction, and on appropriate measures concerning equipment and means of delivery specifically designed for the production or use of chemical agents for weapons purposes. Article X. 1. The states parties to this convention undertake to facilitate, and have the right to participate in, the fullest possible exchange of equipment, materials and scientific and technological information for the use of bacteriological, biological, agents and toxins for peaceful purposes. Parties to the convention in a position to do so shall also cooperate in contributing individually or together with other states or international organizations to the further development and application of scientific discoveries in the field of bacteriology, biology, for the prevention of disease, or for other peaceful purposes. 2. This convention shall be implemented in a manner designed to avoid hampering the economic or technological development of states parties to the convention or international cooperation in the field of peaceful bacteriological, biological, activities, including the international exchange of bacteriological, biological, agents and toxins and equipment for the processing, use or production of bacteriological, biological, agents and toxins for peaceful purposes in accordance with the provisions of the Convention. Article 11. Any state party may propose amendments to this Convention. Amendments shall enter into force for each state party accepting the amendments upon their acceptance by a majority of the states parties to the Convention and thereafter for each remaining state party on the date of acceptance by it. Article 12. 5 years after the entry into force of this convention, or earlier if it is requested by a majority of parties to the convention by submitting a proposal to this effect to the depository governments, a conference of states parties to the convention shall be held at Geneva, Switzerland, to review the operation of the convention, with a view to assuring that the purposes of the preamble and the provisions of the convention, including the provisions concerning negotiations on chemical weapons, are being realized. Such review shall take into account any new scientific and technological developments relevant to the Convention. Article 13. 1. This Convention shall be of unlimited duration. 2. Each state party to this Convention shall in exercising its national sovereignty have the right to withdraw from the Convention if it decides that extraordinary events, related to the subject matter of the Convention, have jeopardized the supreme interests of its country. It shall give notice of such withdrawal to all other states parties to the Convention and to the United Nations Security Council 3 months in advance. Such notice shall include a statement of the extraordinary events it regards as having jeopardized its supreme interests. Article 14. 1. This Convention shall be open to all states for signature. Any state which does not sign the Convention before its entry into force in accordance with paragraph 3 of this article may accede to it at any time. 2. This Convention shall be subject to ratification by signatory states. Instruments of ratification and instruments of accession shall be deposited with the governments of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics and the United States of America, which are hereby designated the depository governments. 3. This Convention shall enter into force after the deposit of instruments of ratification by 22 governments, including the governments designated as depositories of the Convention. 4. For states whose instruments of ratification or accession are deposited subsequent to the entry into force of this Convention, it shall enter into force on the date of the deposit of their instruments of ratification or accession. 5. The depository governments shall promptly inform all signatory and acceding states of the date of each signature, the date of deposit of each instrument of ratification or of accession and the date of the entry into force of this Convention, and of the receipt of other notices. 6. This Convention shall be registered by the depository governments pursuant to Article 102 of the Charter of the United Nations. Article 15. This Convention, the English, Russian, French, Spanish and Chinese texts of which are equally authentic, shall be deposited in the archives of the depository governments. Duly certified copies of the Convention shall be transmitted by the depository governments to the governments of the signatory and acceding states.